Hi there, grade 9 Spedgens. So we are now on the fourth week of our module-based instruction. For the first 3 weeks, we covered a series of lessons on modals, namely the modals of permission, the modals of obligation, and the modals of prohibition. I hope you were able to meet the objectives of the said lesson. So for the fourth week and for the fifth week, we will cover this time a two-part lesson on conditionals. So the module that you are holding right now for the fourth week is good for 2 weeks. It means we have divided our lesson on conditionals again for 2 weeks. So once again, kindly have your modules ready and your answer notebooks, and we will begin with our lesson on conditionals. So during the discussion later, when we already understand the concept of conditionals, you will find out that there are many types of conditionals. So for this week, we will only focus on the two kinds of conditionals, and those are the ones that are or that can be seen on your screen. So for lesson 1, we will only focus on zero and first conditionals. So let's have a short review first of our lesson for the previous week. If you could remember, our previous lesson was all about the modals of prohibition. So to recall, kindly answer this review question. What modals do we use to express prohibition? Alright, so if you said that the modals used to express prohibition are can't, may not, and must not, then you are correct. So just a short review, can't is the most common model of prohibition. It's the one that we always use to prohibit someone from doing something. May not, on the other hand, is the most polite way of expressing prohibition, whereas must not is the strongest form of prohibition among the three. So for this week's lesson, we only have a single objective being targeted. So our objective for this week is to express understanding on zero and first conditionals. Now get your notebooks ready and please answer what I know on page 3. Once again, I'm reminding you to pause this video so that you will be given the time to answer the activity. After you answer, you can get back to the video and we can begin with our discussion on the first and zero conditionals. I am assuming that you are already done with the activity and we can begin with our lecture already on conditionals. So like I said over and over again, our focus for this week will only be on first and zero conditionals. But first and foremost, let's try to understand the concept of conditionals first. Kay mas hapos maintindihan ang zero kag first conditionals kung naintindihan ta first and foremost ang ginatawag nga conditionals. So ang conditionals have another name. Sometimes conditionals are also called if clauses. Okay? You will find out later why they are called if clauses. And actually it's very obvious already. Conditionals are called sometimes if clauses because they make use of the word if. Okay? What else? Conditionals describe the result of something that might happen, that is in the present or future, or might have happened but did not. Okay? So that is the exact definition of what conditionals are. Okay? So based on that definition, we can conclude that conditionals are statements nga naga-cover sang different time frames. May ara conditionals nga gini-express sa present, may ara man gina-express sa future. And then we also have conditionals nga gina-express referring to the past. And of course, depende sa imo gina-mean nga conditional, ang imo nga mga verb tenses nagalain-lain man. So kindly take note that one of the most important aspects of this lesson is the pattern. So conditionals, our lesson on conditionals is more likely a grammar lesson. So you will learn this better if you understand and memorize the pattern. So what you see on your screen is the pattern of forming a conditional. So to answer the question, how is a conditional formed? The answer is you add an if clause and a main clause. So there are many kinds of conditionals. Four to be exact. May ara kita apat ka klases ang conditionals, but ang tanan sa ila always go back to the same pattern. May if clause kag may main clause. Okay? Kindly refer to the colors that I use para mas mahapos para sa inyo i-distinguish kung diin ang if clause kag kung diin ang main clause. So I use the color blue for if clause and green for the main clause. So if you try to look at the example there, we have the example conditional, if I feel sick, comma, I would go to the doctor. So that statement is an example of a conditional. Kay kung makita naton, hambal ta kagina, conditionals are also called if clauses. This sentence happens to have an if clause, of course, introduced by the word if, and then it presents a certain condition where the result of that condition is also given. So exactly, this statement is an example of a conditional. But try to focus on the pattern. So we have if I feel sick, of course, that is your if clause. It starts with an if. And then the second part is your main clause, which, of course, is a sentence. I would go to the doctor. Another point that you have to remember, kay obrahon nyo ni karon sa inyo activity, ang if clause, kag ang main clause nimo pwede ma-interchange. But silingon, pwede nga ang if clause ara sa una, pareho sang example nga ginhatag ko da, but you can also have your if clause at the back. Okay? So meaning to say, i-interchange nimo ang sentence. You can also say, I would go to the doctor if I feel sick. Ano ang kinalain kung ang if ara sa una, kag ang if ara sa likod? The answer is comma. Okay? It is very important because pag nagsulat ka mo later, kinanglan nga insakto ang patterns ang imo nga conditional. Kung ang if clause nimo ara sa una, ang if clause nimo kag ang main clause should be separated by a comma. Okay? So if I feel sick, comma, I would go to the doctor. That's how you write it. But if your main clause comes first and then your if clause comes second, no need for you to use a comma. So I would go to the doctor if I feel sick, but you don't see a comma there. All right? I hope you understood what I was trying to say. Kindly do this on your own. Let's try to identify the if clause and the main clause in the following sentences. So let's focus first on the first sentence. It reads, if it rains, it pours. Okay, so that is an example of a conditional. But my question is, where is the if clause and where is the main clause? All right, so of course, your if clause is here. Why? Because it starts with if. That's the most obvious reason. What about your main clause? Your main clause is it pours right here. Yes, because it is a sentence that you put after an if. Okay? So take note also, ang aton if ara sa una, ang if clause ara sa una, therefore, nag-usar kita, comma. If it rains, comma, it pours. Okay, let's go to the second sentence. People get sick if they are not careful about their health. Okay, try to find again the if clause. Have you found it? So your if clause starts with, of course, the word if. So you will start from here. If they are not careful about their health. Their health. That's your if clause. Again, your if clause starts with the word if. So if that is your if clause, the remaining words are part of your main clause. So what is your main clause? Your main clause is people get sick. Okay? So where can you find your if clause? Sa una or sa likod? Sa likod. So if you have noticed, kaya ara sa likod, wala kita nag-usar sang kama. I hope it is already clear. So far, kabalo na ta kung ano ang ginatawag nga conditional, kag kabalo na ta kung paano sulaton ang isa ka conditional. But this time, let's have the four kinds of conditionals. So this is, or these are, kumbaga, the gist or the heart of our two-part lesson. Okay? So the four kinds of conditionals are the zero conditionals, the first conditionals, the second conditionals, and the third conditionals. They are not really hard to remember kasi syempre, they're using the word zero, first, second, and third. Okay? So let us discuss them one by one and find out the differences among the four. Okay. So para mas mahapos ang aton discussion, ang himuon naton kada discuss ta sang conditional, unahon ta danay ang form or ang pattern. After that, we will discuss the use or kung paano sa usaron or ano ang iya meaning kung amo na nga conditional ang imo nga usaron. So let us discuss first the zero conditionals. Okay? So again, when you're talking about conditionals and their form, it is all about the grammar behind it. So it is all about the pattern. And the pattern is already given. The one that you can see on your screen, that is the pattern for zero conditionals. All you have to do is memorize it. And if you cannot memorize it, you have your modules with you. The pattern is also there. Okay? So once again, tanan nga conditionals, may ara, if clause, kag main clause. Okay? Pero, ang kada conditionals may lain-lain nga pattern sa sulod sang if clause, kag lain-lain man nga pattern sa sulod sang main clause. So pag maghambal ka gani zero conditional, ang pattern sang if clause nimo is this. You just follow the pattern. If, syempre mauna ka if for if clause, and then you have your subject, and then you have your simple present verb. That is your pattern for your if clause sa zero conditionals. Okay? Maghambal ko simple present nga verb, it means S form or base form, ang pinaka-basic nga forms ng verb. So simple present verb, for example, we have run, runs. That is simple present. Run, kung ang imo subject, damo, plural, wala S. But, you say runs, kung ang imo subject is singular. Okay? Another example of simple present verb, draw, draws. Okay, that is simple present. So again, for zero conditional, the pattern is if plus subject plus simple present verb sa imo if clause. What happens sa imo main clause? You have your subject followed by simple present verb. Okay? So sa zero conditional, ang imo verb sa if clause kag ang imo verb sa main clause, duwa sila are in the simple present verb. Okay? Look at the example. If you heat water to 100 degrees, it boils. That statement is an example of a zero conditional. So you have if, sa if clause mo, and then you have your subject, nga you, subject, and then you have your verb nga heat. What form of the verb did we use? Simple present. Nga kaya muna sa ang pattern. Okay? So, kadto naman ta sa main clause. This is your subject. And then this is your verb, boils. What form of the verb is used in the main clause for zero conditional? Simple present. Nga aliwat, paano ko nabalaan? Kaya amo na sa ang pattern. Okay, the pattern for conditionals, the patterns, I mean for conditionals do not change. So always go back to the pattern. So to recall, zero conditionals pattern is if clause, if plus subject plus simple present verb. And for the main clause, you have subject plus simple present verb. Okay? Do not forget to put a comma if you put the if clause before the main clause. So we know how to write already a zero conditional. Our next question would be, when do we use the zero conditional? Or let's talk about its function. Okay? So you have there the explanation. A zero conditional is a conditional used for talking about things which are always true. Okay? What do I mean by things which are always true? Example, scientific facts and general truths. Kung balikan tang example ko kagina, that is always true. If you heat water to 100 degrees, it boils. That is a scientific fact. Okay? So again, mausar kita zero conditional para sa mga bagay nga always true, backed up by science or general truths. We will have several examples on the next slide. So, mas magka-idea pagid kamo kung paano ginausar ang zero conditionals. Here we have additional examples of zero conditionals. Okay, let's have example A. If you cross an international date line, the time changes. Okay? So lantawon tang duwa, lantawon ta ang form kag function para ma-prove tagid kung bala ang atong ginatulok is zero conditional. So, this is our if clause. If you cross an international date line, right? So you have if plus subject nga you, and then our verb in the simple present, right? Okay, then for our main clause, we have the subject, time, and then changes, which is our verb in the simple present form. So, sa pattern, ang example number 1 naton is indeed a zero conditional. Now, for function, nga nag-usar sa zero conditional because it's true. 'Di ba? It's a scientific truth. If you cross an international date line, kung magtabok ka sa international date line, of course, ang time nagabag-o na. Okay? So that's why we use a zero conditional for the first sentence. Okay, second, if it rains, the grass gets wet. Okay? So try to analyze the pattern. Again, if clause is if it rains. So sa imo if clause, you have if, and then you have the subject it, and then you have the verb in the S form or the simple present form, rains. So correct ang pattern sa if clause. Sa main clause, the grass gets wet, the subject is the grass, and then you have the verb gets, okay, which is also in the simple present form. And that is a zero conditional because it's true. Siyempre, kung mag-ulan, ang result would be ang mga hilamon mabasa. Of course, if they're exposed to the rain. Okay? So, letter B is a legit example of zero conditional. Third, wood does not burn if there is no air. Okay. Try to find again your if clause. Yes. So, your if clause this time is at the back part of the sentence. Here, if there is no air, that's why the sentence does not have a comma, right? The first two, ang if you cross kag if it rains, may comma kay ang imo if clause ara sa una. Okay. So pattern again, you have if plus subject there, and of course the simple present verb is for the if clause. For the main clause, wood does not burn. So you have the subject would, and you have the simple present helping verb does. Okay? So in terms of pattern, your example number 3 is exactly a zero conditional. And in terms of function or in terms of meaning or use, that is also a zero conditional because it's true. Hindi masunog ang kahoy kung wala hangin. Because to start a fire or to cultivate a fire, para magdako pagid ang kalayo or masunog ang isa kabagay kinahanglan nimo hangin. So the three examples again are examples of zero conditionals. And I hope you understand this part of our lesson. Okay, sige, let's move on to first conditionals. Okay? So first conditionals of course is a different kind of conditional. Lain man ni siya sa zero conditional. Again, let's talk about the pattern. Pariho lang Japon, ang imo nga first conditional kay conditional sa may if clause sa kag main clause. Pero may ara na kinalain sa itsura sa sulod sa mga if clauses kag main clauses. Okay? So, ang imo if clause sa first conditional, if plus subject plus simple present verb. What have you noticed? Ang if clause sang first conditional pareho sa if clause sang imo nga zero conditional. But ang main clause nila lainay na. Okay? So ang main clause sang imo first conditional may ara na will. So the pattern of the main clause is subject plus will plus verb in the base form. Okay? So again, ang first conditional kag zero conditional, pareho ang ila nga patterns ang if clauses. But lainay ang patterns ang ila main clauses. Ang first conditional may ara na will. Okay? Try to look at the example sentence. If clause, if you study hard. Okay, that's your if clause. The pattern is the same. If plus subject nga you kag simple present action verb nga study. Okay? Now, look at the main clause. You have you will pass the test. Okay? So subject you and then you have your helping verb will. Ang will is always will in the first conditional. It cannot be replaced with any other forms of helping verbs. And then pass, which is the verb in the base form. Paano ko liwat na balaan nga amo na dapat ang pagplastar sang first conditional? Because again, it's the pattern already. Okay? So you just have to memorize and get yourselves familiar with the pattern. Now for the use. First conditionals are conditionals used for talking about things which are possible in the present or the future. Kagina ang zero conditional naton, that is for, or those are for general truths. Scientific facts and general truths. Ang first conditionals naman naton, let's highlight the word possibility. So first conditional talks about things nga posible matabo san-o, subong, or in the future. Okay? So to add things which may happen. Okay? That's why the example sentence is, if you study hard, you will pass the test. It is possible that you will pass the test as a result of you studying hard. Okay? So ang conditional kung na-notice nyo man is all about cause and effect. Diba? When a certain condition is presented, a certain result also follows or could follow or may follow. Okay? That's why they're called conditionals. Okay? So shall we have more examples of first conditionals? Let's have them on our next slide. Okay, kindly study the following examples of first conditionals. Again, try to look at the form or the grammar and try to look at the function or the meaning. Example A, if it's sunny, we'll go to the park. Okay, that is an example of a first conditional. Okay, if clause, if it's sunny. Main clause, we'll go to the park. May kama, kay ang imo if clause ara sa una. Okay? So, sa imo if clause, of course, you have if, and then you have subject nga it, din ang verb, ara sa is. Nan. So, if plus subject plus simple present form of the verb. But, in the main clause, you have the subject, and then you have will, pero contracted, ginpanubo sa. Okay? And then you have the base form, go. The same pattern nga gin-discuss ko for first conditional. What is the meaning? Possibility. Kung magnami ang adlaw, then, posible nga, makakadto ta sa park. Okay? O, that is not a general truth. That is a possibility. That's why, hindi kita pwede makausar sang zero conditional. Ang usaro naton first conditional. Second example, Paula will be sad if one leaves. If clause. If one leaves. That's your if clause. Pattern, if plus subject plus simple present form. Kay may S, leaves. Kaya ang imo nga subject singular. What is your main clause? Paula will be sad. Pattern, subject nga Paula, will nga helping verb, and then your base form nga be. Okay? Meaning, possibility, because it's a first conditional. Kung, ang if gali sa aton translation sa Hiligaynon is kung. Kung maglakat si Juan, posible nga masubuan si Paula. Possibility. That's why it's first conditional. Last example. If you cook the supper, I'll wash the dishes. If clause, if you cook the supper. The pattern is the same. If plus subject nga you plus simple present form of the verb cook. Teaser nga wala S. Kaya syempre ang subject mo you still have to observe subject-verb agreement. Di ka kahambal you cooks. Okay? So, main clause, I'll wash the dishes. The pattern, again, is the same. That is the subject. I will, you have the will there, but contracted again, shortened form. And then you have the verb wash in the base form. Okay? What is the meaning of the third sentence? Possibility. Again, possibility. Because that is the meaning of first conditionals. Kung ikaw ang maluto sang panyapon, posible nga ako ang manghugas. Okay? So again, it's all about the pattern. If the pattern is correct, then the meaning that you would want to convey is also correct. And we are through with our lecture on zero and first conditionals. So we will leave it at that, and we will continue talking about second and third conditionals for the next week. I really do hope that we meet eye to eye. It means we understand each other just by listening to the discussion that I did. Okay, so we will wrap up everything and review the things that we have learned. So what is the form of the zero conditionals? So you can either go back and replay some parts of the video, or you can go to your module because the form of the conditionals are also there. So for the zero conditionals, you have if plus subject plus simple present form of the verb, comma, subject plus simple present form of the verb. That is for zero conditional form. What is the function or the use of the zero conditionals? Saan ota sila ginausar? When you are talking about general truths. Okay? So zero conditionals are used when you're talking about scientific facts or general truths. Next review question. So third review question, what is the form of the first conditionals? Or what is the pattern? So still you have if clause plus main clause, but you have to be specific. We have if plus subject plus the simple present form of the verb, comma, subject plus will plus base form of the verb. Okay? That is the pattern of your first conditionals. Last review question. What is the function or the use of the first conditionals? So, ang aton first conditionals ginausar for possible or things which are possible in the present or in the future. In other words, things which may happen. So for the rest of your activity, kindly answer the following on your notebook. We have let's try A and B, that is on pages 8 and 9. Also, try to answer what I have learned on page 10. I would like to remind you again to not skip what I have learned on page 10 because I'm going to record that under your performance. Also, answer what I can do on pages 10 and 11. And lastly, you have your assessment on page 11. So we will continue talking about second and third conditionals next week. For now, we will end this video lesson and I hope you can finish your activities well. See you next week for our next discussion.